The last argument had no business being. In this fight, Commander Irina Valov stood on the bridge of the 400-meter warship watching the tactical display with an expression that betrayed nothing. Behind her, 23 crew members worked their stations in near silence. The ship had launched from Earth 6 months ago with a complement of 150 combat losses, radiation leaks, and a containment failure in the recycling system had reduced that number to 84. 84 humans against 3,000 Imperial vessels. The display flickered as new contacts poured in from the system's outer edge. Valov counted them automatically: 2,912 capital ships, 260 support vessels, 37 supply tenders. The rest were fighters, corvettes, and the standard swarm of automated drones that the Krith Dominion used to overwhelm enemy point defense. New Carthage hung in the center of the display, a blue-green world with 9 million human settlers. They had no fleet of their own, no planetary defense grid. The colony was barely 40 years old, still dependent on Earth for military protection that was now 120 light-years away, chasing ghosts. In the Orion Spur, confirmed jump signatures, Valov said. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her sensor officer, shook his head. No jump signatures. Commander, they came in on conventional drives, been in system for at least 6 days. That was worse, much worse. Fleet that large, moving on conventional drives meant they had been planned for this. They had come the slow way, hugging gravity wells and masking their approach behind the system's gas giant. Every ship in that armada had known exactly where they were going and exactly what they would find: a single human warship. Message from the colony, Webb continued. Governor PRRA said, is requesting immediate evacuation. Valov did not turn from the display. Tell the governor there are no evacuation ships. Tell him we are the evacuation. She could feel the weight of that statement settling over the bridge. The last argument was a Chimros destroyer, designed for hit-and-run attacks and anti-piracy patrols. Her main rail gun could crack a small moon if properly charged. Her point defense could handle maybe 200 incoming missiles before overheating. Her shields were rated for light cruiser fire, not a sustained barrage from a fleet that outmassed her 10,000 to 1. But she had something else, something the Krith Dominion had never encountered in 200 years of expansion. She had time, 48 hours to be precise, 48 hours since the first long-range sensor ping had identified the Armada's approach. 48 hours of calculation, simulation, and brutal unsleeping work from every human on the ship. They had eaten at their stations, slept in 15-minute rotations. The engineering section had burned out 3 processing clusters running trajectory models, and they had found something. Engineering, Valov said. Status on the main capacitor. Chief Petty Officer Elena Artova's voice crackled through the intercom. 94% and climbing. Railgun is cold. We can fire on your command. Not yet. I need a firing solution on the gas giant's 4th moon. A pause, then. That's a rock, Commander. No tactical value. Did I ask for tactical value? No. Ma'am, calculating solution now. The bridge fell silent again. Valov watched the Armada's approach vectors. They were moving with the precision of a species that had mastered interstellar warfare through sheer numerical superiority. The Krith did not believe in clever tactics. They believed in mass, in overwhelming force, in the simple arithmetic of 3,000 ships against one. That arithmetic was about to fail. The intercom crackled. Solution ready, firing angle locked. We can put a round on that moon at exactly the range you requested. Vueller allowed herself a small tight smile. Hold fire, let them get closer. Commander Webb said, his voice tight. They're hailing us on screen. The main display shifted from tactical to visual. Supreme Admiral Zilveric filled the screen, his scaled face arranged in what humans had learned to recognize as the cry expression for absolute contempt. His command bridge stretched behind him, filled with dozens of officers moving through their duties with mechanical efficiency. Human vessel, Zilvar said. His translator carried the words in flat, emotionless tones. You are identified as a military combatant of the Terran Republic. You are ordered to stand down and prepare for boarding. Your colony will be stripped of all resources. Your population will be processed according to Imperial protocol. Vueller stepped forward until her face filled the camera. Supreme Admiral, she said, I have a question for you, Zil. Varric's eye ridges contracted. You are not in a position to ask questions. Indulge me. Her voice remained calm, almost pleasant. How many of your officers believe in mathematics? The Admiral's head tilted. The gesture was distinctly predatory, a crit expression of confusion that humans had learned to recognize as dangerous. Mathematics is not a belief, he said. It is a tool. Good, Vilov nodded. Then you'll appreciate what I'm about to show you. She cut the channel and turned to her tactical officer. Transmit the data packet, all frequencies, all encryption levels. I want every ship in that Armada to receive it. The transmission took 11 seconds. In the silence that followed, Volov watched the Armada's approach vectors begin to shift. The data packet was beautiful. Commander Valkov had spent 48 hours ensuring that not the content itself, though the content was elegant in its brutality, the presentation, the structure, the way each mathematical proof built on the last, leading the reader through a logical progression that ended in only one possible conclusion. Any ship entering New Carthag's defensive perimeter would be destroyed. Not by the last argument, not by human weapons, by mathematics, by the cold, unyielding geometry of trajectories, velocities, and the fundamental laws that governed all matter in the universe. The packet contained no threats, no boasts, no demands, just numbers, pages and pages of numbers, cross-referenced with sensor data, gravity maps, and the precise orbital characteristics of every significant mass in the New Carthage system. It proved beyond any reasonable doubt that the Armada could not win, not because humans were stronger, not because they were smarter, because the cry had made an assumption that Volov had spent her entire career learning to exploit. They assumed the system was empty. Commander Webb said, we're getting responses, scattered mostly on the command frequencies. Show me. The tactical display updated. Red icons began blinking across the Armada's formation. Ships that had slowed their approach changed their vectors or dropped back relative to the main fleet. Volov counted 23, then 41, then 90. The cry were arguing. She had studied their psychology extensively. During her academy years, the Dominion was a meritocracy built on a foundation of mathematical certainty. Every promotion, every tactical decision, every strategic deployment was based on cold calculation. Cry officers did not trust intuition. They did not believe in luck. They believed in numbers, which meant the ones who had read her packet understood exactly what it meant. 70% of the fleet is still advancing, Webb reported. That's fine. Vyulov settled into her command chair. The ones who understand will start screaming soon. The ones who don't will find out for themselves. She waited. The Armada continued its approach at their current velocity. They would reach firing range in 43 minutes. At 30 minutes, the last argument would be able to engage with its rail gun. At 20 minutes, the point defense would become active. At 15 minutes, the screaming started. Commander Webb said, "We're intercepting internal fleet communications. 3 of the subordinate admirals are demanding a halt. They're citing our data packet." "Which admirals?" "Varric, Saul, and Tan, all command heavy cruiser divisions. They're broadcasting directly to the Supreme Admirals." Channel. Vyulov nodded. She had expected those 3. Varric commanded the fleet's primary screening force. If he was worried, his ships would hang back, leaving holes in the Armada's formation. Saul was responsible for logistics. If he was worried, the supply tenders would stop advancing, cutting off the fleet's ability to resupply. And Tan was the interesting one. He commanded the Fleet Science Division, which meant he had the equipment to verify her calculations independently. The intercom crackled. "Engineering 2. Bridge rail gun is fully charged. We can fire on your command." "Hold," Vyulov said. "Commander, if they get much closer." I said hold. Engineering channel closed. Vyulov watched the timer tick down. 12 minutes to firing range. 11:10. The Armada's formation began to fracture. Not dramatically, not obviously, but Vyulov had been staring at that display for 2 days straight. She noticed the subtle shift, the destroyers slowing, the cruisers spreading out, the battleships drifting toward the rear of the formation as if seeking protection from the smaller vessels they were supposed to be leading. Zilvaric was losing control. The main display flickered. Incoming transmission command. Channel only. Human. The Admiral's voice carried something new. Not fear. Cry did not experience fear the way humans did, but something adjacent to it. Weariness, a recognition that the numbers had changed. Your transmission is provocative. Valk leaned forward. It's accurate. You claim to have mapped every significant mass in this system. We claim to have weaponized them. The Admiral's eye ridges contracted again. Impossible. The energy required to redirect planetary bodies is less than you think when you have 3 weeks in a gravity well to assist. Vyulov stood. Supreme Admiral, let me be clear. You are not facing one ship. You are facing a system that has been preparing for your arrival since before your fleet left port. Every asteroid, every moon, every piece of debris in this system is a potential weapon, and we have calculated the trajectories for all of them. You are bluffing, am I? Vyulov gestured to her tactical officer. Lieutenant, show him the firing solution for the gas giants. 4th moon. The display shifted. Schematic appeared showing the last argument, the moon and the Armada's current formation. A thin line connected the ship to the moon. Another line showed the moon's projected orbit after impact. It would take exactly 3 hours for the debris to reach the Armada's flank. Your science division will confirm, Volkov said. That moon is primarily iron-nickel composition. When it fractures, the fragments will travel at approximately 30 km/second. Your shields can handle objects up to 2 m in diameter. These fragments will range from 10 to 200 m. Zillick stared at the schematic. You would destroy your own colony, he said. Colony is on the other side of the planet. Vyulov smiled. We did the math. The Cry fleet stopped advancing. Not all of it. 97 ships continued forward, mostly destroyers and frigates, whose captains had not received the data packet or had chosen to ignore it. But the main body, the heavy cruisers, the battleships, the carriers, slowed to a crawl. Vyulov watched the 97 outliers with cold attention. Those ships are going to die, she said quietly. Webb glanced at her. Should we warn them? They had their chance. The 97 ships reached the defensive perimeter at the 22-minute mark. Volkov had defined that perimeter as exactly the range at which the last argument could guarantee a hit on any target. The Cry had no way of knowing that. Their doctrine demanded they close to optimal firing distance before engaging, which meant they had to cross the line. The first ship through was a Cry destroyer, approximately half the size of the last argument. It crossed the perimeter at 0.03 light speed, its shields glowing as it pushed through the system's outer debris field. Nothing happened. The destroyer continued forward, its weapons charged, its targeting systems locked onto the last argument. Behind it, more ships crossed the line. 2040-60 Commander, Webb said, his voice tight. They're painting us with targeting radar. Vyulov did not respond. She was watching the debris field. The destroyer reached optimal firing range. Its forward batteries opened up. Energy bolts crossed the void, aimed directly at the last argument's bridge. The ship's point defense activated, swatting the bolts aside with precise bursts of counter fire. Shields at 97%, Rotova reported. From engineering, minor fluctuations. Nothing serious. Return fire, Vyulov said. The last argument's railgun fired. The round left the barrel at 0.08 light speed. It crossed the distance to the destroyer in less than a second. It did not hit the destroyer. It passed within 500 meters of the ship's hull, close enough to rattle its shields, but not close enough to cause damage. The destroyer's captain must have laughed. Then the round hit the moon. The gas giant's fourth moon was a dead world, barely 200 km in diameter, composed primarily of nickel iron ore with a thin crust of frozen gas. It had been stable in its orbit for 4 billion years. It had no tectonic activity, no internal heat, no reason to believe that today would be any different from the 4 billion years that had come before. The round struck at a precise angle calculated by Volkov's engineering team over 3 days of continuous simulation. It did not destroy the moon. It did not need to. It simply imparted enough kinetic energy to shift the moon's orbit by 0.003 degrees. That was enough. The moon's orbit decayed, not quickly, not dramatically, but measurably. Within 2 hours it would dip below the system's limit. Within 3, it would begin to fracture. Within 4, the fragments would be moving through the Armada's formation. like shrapnel through flesh, transmit the updated trajectory to the Armada. Valev said all channels, web worked. His controls transmitting now. The Krith fleet response was immediate. The 97 ships that had crossed the perimeter slammed on their brakes. Their captains had seen the same data Volv had transmitted. They understood what was coming. They tried to turn back. Debris field hit them first, not the moon's fragments. Those were still hours away, but the outer debris field, the cloud of micrometeoroids, ice crystals, and ancient comet dust that surrounded every star system, was already in motion. The last argument had spent 3 weeks nudging that field into a specific configuration, using the ships, maneuvering thrusters, and a great deal of patience. The result was a curtain of particles moving along the same trajectory as the Armada's advance. The 97 ships flew straight through it. Particles the size of sand grains struck their shields at relativistic speeds. Each impact carried the force of a small explosive. Individually, they were harmless, but there were billions of them. The shields flickered, failed. The ship's hulls began to ablate. Now, Vulov said, the last arguments. Point defense systems opened fire, not at the ships, at the debris field itself. The weapons were designed to destroy incoming missiles, not interstellar gravel, but that was the point. Each pulse of energy sent shock waves rippling through the debris, accelerating the particles to even higher velocities. The effect on the 97 ships was catastrophic. Shields that had been flickering collapsed entirely. Holes that had been ablated began to breach. Atmosphere vented into space. The destroyer, designed for combat against energy weapons and missiles, had never been built to withstand a sand blaster on this scale. 3 ships exploded. Commander Webb said, his voice flat. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Armada. It's Admiral Tran. Put him through. The display shifted. Tan was a younger cry, his scales still bright with the pigmentation of youth. His eye ridges were contracted in an expression Volov had never seen on a cry face before. Fear human, he said. Your calculations are. He stopped, struggled for words. Correct, Vulov offered. Impossible, Tan shook his head. You cannot have predicted every variable. Chaos theory alone, we don't predict chaos, Volov said. We ride it. Your fleet is inside a system we have spent 3 weeks reshaping into a weapon. Every rock, every particle, every gravity well is now part of our defensive network. You cannot advance without being destroyed. You cannot retreat without being destroyed. You cannot even hold position without being destroyed. Tan stared at her. What are you? Vulov leaned back in her chair. We're the ones who did the math. Zolvarik refused to believe. The Supreme Admiral had risen through the cry ranks on a foundation of tactical certainty. He had 137 fleet engagements across 14 systems. He had never lost a ship larger than a corvette. His name was spoken with respect from the core worlds to the outer reaches. And now a single human vessel had just destroyed 3 of his destroyers without firing a direct shot. Impossible, he said again, turning from the display to face his command staff. The human claims are mathematically unsound. The energy required to destabilize a moon's orbit has been verified by our own calculations. Admiral Tan stepped forward, a data pad extended in his three-fingered hand. Supreme Admiral, I have run the numbers. Myself, the human's firing solution was optimal. Her trajectory predictions are accurate to 6 decimal places, if that. Moon fractures as predicted. The debris field will intercept our formation in approximately 3 hours. Xylix snatched the data pad, scanned the contents, his eye ridges contracted. Further, you are suggesting we retreat. I am suggesting we recalculate. The command bridge fell silent. Galactic looked around at his officers. He saw uncertainty in their posture, doubt in their eye ridges. The humans' transmission had done more than damage his fleet, it had damaged his authority. Admiral Varric, he said, you're screening for status. Varric's voice came through the bridge. Speakers, 5 ships lost to debris. Damage, 7 more with compromised shields. The screening force can advance, but we will require support from the main fleet. Admiral Sol. Supply lines, 2 tenders have withdrawn from the system. They are refusing to advance until the humans' claims are disproven. Galactic felt something he had not experienced in decades. The cold certainty that had guided his career was cracking, not because he doubted his own abilities, because he could not find the flaw in the human's mathematics. Tan, he said, you believe the human. I believe the numbers, Supreme Admiral, then you will test them. Galactic turned back to the display. The human ship hung in the center, tiny and insignificant. Order a cruiser to advance on the colony, direct trajectory, maximum speed. If the humans' claims are accurate, the cruiser will be destroyed. If not, we will have our proof. Tan's eye ridges contracted in alarm. Supreme Admiral, that would be test execute. The cruiser was a Kesich class vessel, 2 km of armored hull and weapons batteries. It carried a crew of 3,000 cry. Its shields were rated for sustained bombardment from planetary defense grids. Its captain, a veteran of the Orion campaigns, had requested the assignment personally. Vilov watched it advance. Distance, she asked. 12 minutes to firing range. Webb said 11:10. Engineering railgun status, fully charged. ROVA replied, firing solutions locked. Hold. The cruiser crossed the defensive perimeter. Its shields flickered as it pushed through the debris field but held. The last argument remained silent. The cruiser's weapons charged. 9 minutes. The cruiser fired energy bolts crossed the void, aimed at the last argument's engines. The point defense systems intercepted them, but the impact was heavier this time. The ship shuddered, shields at 82%. Rotova reported 8 minutes. The cruiser fired again. This time the bolt struck the last argument's hull. Armor plating buckled. The bridge lights flickered. Commander Webb said, we need to return. Fire. Volov shook her head. Not yet. Let them get closer. 7 minutes. The cruiser's captain, emboldened by the lack of response, pushed his ship to maximum speed. Distance between the 2 vessels shrank. 6 minutes 54. Now, Vilov said the last argument fired. The round left the railgun and crossed the distance in less than a second. It did not strike the cruiser. It passed within 50 m of its hull, close enough to scorch the armor but not close enough to penetrate. The cruiser's captain had a moment to feel relief. Then the round struck the debris field behind him. The effect was instantaneous. The curtain of particles that the cruiser had pushed through on its approach was now moving at relativistic speeds propelled by the shock wave of the railgun round. The particles struck the cruiser's aft shields like a hammer. The shields held barely, then the second wave hit and the third. The cruiser's captain tried to turn, tried to bring his ship around to face the debris, but the particles were coming from every direction now, accelerated by the shockwave into a chaotic storm of high velocity gravel. The shields failed. Hull breached. The cruiser exploded. 3,000 crew, Webb said quietly. Villeneuve did not respond. She was watching the Armada. The remaining 94 ships that had crossed the perimeter were trying to retreat, but the debris field had thickened around them. They were trapped. Transmit to the Armada, she said. Tell them we have 94 ships in our kill box. Tell them we will release them if the fleet withdraws. If not, she let the sentence hang. The response came in less than a minute. Human Zalaric's voice had changed. The contempt was gone. The certainty was gone. What remained was something Volkov had not expected from a Cry admiral. Desperation. You have made your point. Release my ships and I will consider withdrawing. Volkov shook her head. You misunderstand. Supreme Admiral, I'm not negotiating. I am informing. Your fleet will withdraw to the system's edge. Your ships will leave their weapons powered down. Your supply tenders will remain in position as hostages if you attempt to advance. Again, we will not destroy your ships. She paused. We will destroy your star. Zalaric laughed. It was an ugly sound, grating through the translator. Cry. Laughter was not meant to convey humor. It was meant to convey contempt, to show that the speaker considered the listener so far beneath them that even anger was wasted. You will destroy our star, the admiral repeated. With one ship, with one round, Villeneuve corrected. She tapped her console. The display shifted to show a schematic of the new Carthage system. The red dwarf star at its center was unremarkable, small, dim, unstable. It had been classified as a flare star decades ago, prone to sudden bursts of radiation that made long-term habitation difficult. What the Cry had not known was that the star was dying. Your scientists will confirm, Volkov said. This star is in the final stages of its life cycle. Its core is degenerate. Its fusion reactions are unstable. It requires only a slight perturbation to trigger a collapse. She highlighted a trajectory from the last argument to the star's corona. The rail gun round would take approximately 6 hours to reach its target. When it struck, the perturbation would be minimal, a ripple in the star's outer layers, nothing that would normally cause concern. But the star was balanced on a knife's edge. The collapse will not be immediate, Volkov continued. You will have approximately 4 hours to evacuate your fleet. After that, the star will contract into a temporary black hole. The gravity gradient will tear your ships apart long before the event horizon reaches them. Zilk stared at the schematic. You would destroy your own colony. The colony is on the opposite side of the planet. Villeneuve smiled. We did the math. The command bridge of the Cry flagship fell silent. Zilveric looked at his officers. He saw the same thing on every face. Not fear. Cry did not fear death, but they feared failure. And this was failure on a scale that had no precedent in Dominion history. Admiral Tan, Zilver said, verify the humans' claims. Tan was already working. His station flickered with data from the fleet's long-range sensor, the star's radiation output, its gravitational Signature, the subtle wobble in its rotation that indicated core instability. Supreme Admiral, he said, his voice tight, the human is correct, the star is degenerate. A perturbation of sufficient magnitude could trigger collapse. Sufficient magnitude being a rail gun round of the type used by the human vessel. Zyla closed his eyes. He had been a fool. He saw that now. He had assumed that the human ship was a conventional military vessel bound by the same rules of engagement as every other species in the galaxy. He had assumed that its captain would fight to defend the colony, not to destroy it. He had assumed that humans valued their own lives enough to avoid mutual annihilation. He had assumed wrong. Order the fleet to withdraw, he said quietly. Supreme Admiral, I said withdraw. The order went out across the Armada. Engines flared. Ships that had been holding position began to move toward the system's edge. The 94 trapped vessels released from the debris field limped after them, but Vulov was not finished. Transmit to the Armada, she said. Tell them they have 2 hours to reach minimum safe distance. Webb nodded, transmitting. Commander, Ristaz's voice came through the intercom. The star's radiation output is increasing. If it flares while we're this close, we won't be here. Vulov turned to her navigation officer. Plot a course for the colony, best possible speed. I, Commander. The last argument turned away from the retreating Armada and burned for New Carthage. Behind it, the red dwarf star pulsed once, twice, warning of what was to come. The cry fleet did not withdraw. Not entirely. Zilvar ordered the retreat, and most of his ships obeyed. But 3 subordinate admirals had seen something in the humans' calculations that the Supreme Admiral had missed, a flaw. Supreme Admiral, Admiral Varick's voice crackled through the command bridge speakers. The human's threat is empty. If she destroys the star, her colony dies with it. Her people die with it. She will not fire. Zilveric turned to face the speaker. You are questioning my order. I am questioning the humans' willingness to commit suicide. The bridge fell silent. Zilaric looked at Tan. The Science Admiral's eye ridges were contracted in thought. Supreme Admiral, Tan said slowly, the humans' mathematics are sound, but Admiral Varick raises a valid point. The colony is not self-sufficient. It requires the star's energy to maintain its environmental systems. If the star collapses, the colony dies. Zilaric finished. Yes, I am aware. Then why are we retreating? Zilveric had no answer, or rather he had an answer that he could not articulate. It was not logic that had prompted his retreat. It was instinct. The same instinct that had kept him alive through 37 fleet engagements. The human was not bluffing, but he could not prove that, could not defend that instinct to his officers, and so he stood in silence while his command structure fractured around him. Admiral Saul Varick continued, your supply tenders, how long can the fleet maintain position without resupply? Saul's voice was hesitant. 3 weeks. Perhaps 4. Admiral Tan, how long? Until the star's collapse becomes irreversible. If the human fires, 4 hours, and if she does not fire. Tan paused. The star will remain stable for approximately another 600 years. Then the human is bluffing. Varick's voice carried the certainty of a mind that had made a decision and would not be swayed. She has shown her hand. She will not destroy her own people. We Have nothing to fear, ships Zolvarik said quietly. You are forgetting the human ships. Varik eye ridges contracted. She has one ship. She had one ship when she destroyed 3 of our destroyers. She had one ship when she trapped 94 of our vessels in a debris field. She had one ship when she threatened to collapse a star. Zilva stepped forward. How many ships does she need? The argument continued for another 20 minutes. By the end, the command structure of the Cry fleet had shattered into 3 factions. Admiral Varik advocated for an immediate advance, believing the humans' threats to be empty. Admiral Saul advocated for a controlled withdrawal, believing that risk too great, and Admiral Tan advocated for a tactical pause, believing that more data was needed before any decision could be made. Zeleric overruled them all. The fleet will withdraw to the system's edge, he said. We will hold position for 24 hours. If the human does not fire, we will reassess. If she does, he stopped. Supreme Admiral, if she fires, we will know that humans are not like any species we have encountered before. The last argument reached New Carthage 6 hours later. Volkov stood on the bridge, watching the planet grow from a dot to disk to a world. The colony's lights were visible. On the night side, a scattered network of settlements that represented 9 million human lives. 9 million reasons not to fire, Commander Webb said. The Armada has stopped retreating. They're holding at the system's edge. How many ships? Approximately 2,000. The rest have continued toward the jump point. Valev nodded. She had expected this. The Cry were not cowards. They were calculating. They were waiting to see if she would actually destroy a star to protect a colony. She would engineering, she said. Status on the rail gun, fully charged. Artova replied, firing solution locked on. The star, hold Commander if we wait too long. I know. Valev turned to the main display. The Armada hung at the edge of the system, a cloud of red icons that represented 2,000 ships and millions of sea lives. They were waiting for her to blink. She would not blink, but she would give them one more chance. Open a channel to the Armada, all frequencies. The channel opened. Volkov faced the camera. Supreme Admiral Zilverik, you have 2 hours to withdraw beyond the system's gravity. Well, after that I will fire on the star. This is not a negotiation. This is not a bluff. This is a warning. She cut the channel. The bridge fell silent. The crew watched the display. The Armada did not move. 1 hour passed. 2 hours. Valev stood at the center of the bridge, her hand resting on the rail gun's firing control. Her finger was steady. Her breathing was calm. She had accepted what she was about to do 6 days ago when the first sensor ping had identified the Armada's approach. 9 million lives against 2,000 ships. The math was simple, Commander Webb said. 2 hours have passed. Armada is still holding position. Any movement? No, ma'am. Vulev closed her eyes. Fire. The last argument's rail gun fired for the final time. The round left the barrel at 0.08 light speed and streak toward the red dwarf star. It would take 6 hours to reach its target, 6 hours for the Cry to evacuate, 6 hours for the colony to prepare for the end of their world. Volv opened her eyes. Sound. General quarters, she said. All hands to escape pods. We are abandoning ship. Commander. That's an order, Lieutenant. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Crew Members rushed to their stations, initiating the evacuation sequence. Escape pods began launching from the last argument's hull, streaking toward the colony below. Valkov remained at her post. "Commander, your pod is ready," Webb said. In a moment she watched the display. The railgun round was a dot of light moving toward the star. Behind it, the Armada had finally begun to move. Ships were scattering in every direction, trying to reach the jump point before the star collapsed. They would not make it. The round struck the star's corona 6 hours later. The effect was immediate. The star's outer layers rippled, then contracted. The core, already degenerate, began to collapse under its own weight. The Armada died. First, the gravity gradient hit the sea. Ships like a wave. Cruisers were crushed. Battleships were torn apart. Destroyers were flung into each other by forces they had never been designed to withstand. The red icons on the display winked out one by one. Zilvarak flagship lasted longer than most. It was the largest ship in the Armada, built to withstand forces that would have destroyed lesser vessels, but even it could not resist the pull of a collapsing star. The last thing the Supreme Admiral saw was the humans' escape pod, tiny and insignificant, descending toward the colony below. She had done it. She had destroyed a star to save 9 million people, and she had not blinked. The star collapsed into a temporary black hole 12 hours after the round struck. By then, the last argument was gone. The colony was gone. The Armada was gone. What remained was a scar in space, a wound that would take centuries to heal, and one escaped pod. Valov drifted in the silence, watching the black hole through the pod's small viewport. She was alone. The other pods had made it to the colony's surface, but the colony was gone. The environmental systems had failed the moment the star collapsed. 9 million people dead in the dark. She had known this would happen, had accepted it. The math had been clear from the beginning. 1 star, 1 colony, 1 Armada, all of it balanced. On the edge of a knife, she had pushed. A light flickered on the pod's control panel. Incoming transmission, not from the colony, not from the Armada, from somewhere else, somewhere distant. Vyulov activated the receiver. Human vessel. The voice was unfamiliar, not cry. Something else, something new. "We have been watching." "Watching what?" "Your battle, your choice, your star." The voice paused. "We did not believe the cry. When they told us about you, we did not believe that a species would destroy its own world to protect its people. We did not believe that a single ship could stand against an Armada. And now we believe." Transmission ended. Vyulov sat in the silence, watching the black hole spin. The pod's life support would last another 3 days. After that, she would join the colony, join the Armada, join the star. But she had won, not the battle, not the war, something more important. The cry would remember this day. The others, the ones who had been watching, would remember. They would tell stories about the human who destroyed a star, about the ship that stood alone, about the species that would rather burn than kneel, and they would be afraid. Vyulov closed her eyes. The pod drifted, the black hole spun, and somewhere in the darkness, the Armada's survivors, the ones who had escaped, were already spreading the word. 1 human vessel, 1 human commander, 1 human choice. The galaxy would never be the same.